Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. Unless somebody out there? Yeah, go ahead.
As we already know, Malay are lack of business. But why government have the policy that the penjawat awam cannot do the business? Like my father cannot do the business as he work for the government.
One of the difficulties we have is conflict of interest. It's difficult enough to focus on one thing, to do good of it without other considerations. If you work, I used to work for the government in America, work for the government, county hospital, work for the government. And I enjoyed my work for the government job. I didn't have to worry whether my patient can afford me or not because I get a paycheck here. I enjoy that work. But I'm in private practice. In private practice now, I also enjoy the work because I get a satisfaction. If I don't do well, people won't come to me, I don't have income. That also has satisfaction. But when you combine the two missions, and there are many hospitals now that combine the two missions, how do you separate the two? If you've got half a government job and half a private sector job, how do you separate the two? Well, this gives me extra income, so I better pay attention to this one and ignore this one. So that the difficulty of the conflict of interest. So if you can draw guidelines that doesn't interfere with the conflict of interest, that would be fine. Now, I don't mind people in level Division 3, Division 4 going engaged into business because those are jobs that doesn't 9-to-5 jobs. It's okay. You can do business at 9-to-5 job. But if you're in a senior position in the government, there's no such thing as a 9-to-5 job. If you're a KSU or a DO, your job doesn't start at 5 o'clock. You should theoretically get a 24-hour job. Like my job is a 24-hour job. So when do you have time to do business then? Suppose you're doing business and your office calls you, there's a flight to KL. That's why I'm against that. For the lower level government official, civil servant, yes, because their job is well defined. But when you're in the executive level, Division 2 and above, I think either you stay in government or if you're good enough in business, get out of business and go into business. That's what I did. I enjoyed government work, getting a paycheck, it's nice, get a paycheck every 2 weeks. But I decided to try my luck in the private sector, so I tried to completely break the two. Because I don't think I will be, in my heart, I don't think I can do a good job in separating the two. But I'll always be paying attention to people who pay me. If somebody comes at midnight, doesn't in the government job, I'll say, I'm sure to get paid anyway, so I pay attention to the other one.
When we talk about education, is there any specific the language? I mean, the language it is specific language to teach them in Malaysia now they teach math and science in English. So is that a good thing, or we should teach them in the mother tongue of the country itself?
Yeah. That's an excellent question. That has been debated among top levels. People, the United Nations have a paper out saying that you're better off teaching in your mother tongue. Before you get into a lot of arguments in that, let's a couple of things that we must establish first so that we don't get into explaining it. Number one is this: the more languages you know, the better. And you must know, every Malaysian must know at least 2 languages. And the reason for knowing 2 languages is not for the sake of knowing 2 languages. The language, as Edward Safir says, is the way how you look at the world. When Malay language, use that Malay language, you look at the world through the Malay culture. But when you use English, you look at the world through the English culture that way. And the more perspective we have, the better. I'm always being complimented by my colleagues because whenever there's a problem in a hospital or there's a discussion, I always come up with an answer that's different from what everyone is thinking. And they used to compliment me. And I used to be saying, oh yeah, I'm really smart because nobody else thought that way. But after thinking a lot about it, no, that's not the reason. I had the privilege of having bilingual education right from the very beginning. I'm fluent in bilingual. In other words, I dream in English, I dream in Malay, I speak in Malay, I speak in English, but I cannot speak in both languages. If I write an essay in English, I think in English and write in English. If I write an essay in Malay, I think in Malay and I write in Malay. And then I have somebody translate, because I can't, my brain separates the two functions. And now the medical studies show that those who are bilingual at a very young age, in other words, native bilingual, you know, 2 languages, at least 2 languages. When you do studies on them, the brain is more efficient. Not only are they more efficient, they can do computational analysis much faster than people who only have 1 language, because you're activating 2 parts of the brain. So there are many cognitive advantages for having 2 languages. So the question now is, every Malaysian must know 2 languages. And I firmly believe that the Chinese and Indians in Malaysia are more advanced than Malays, simply because the average Chinese, the average Indian knows 3 languages. Their native language, Malay, and English. Malays only know 1 language, and they're severely handicapped. Not only are they handicapped in the marketplace, they're handicapped in their thinking. Now, Malays potentially can have 3 languages: Malay, English, Arabic. Perfect 3 languages, different scripts. And that's what we should strive for. Now, how best to achieve that? So then we let the expert, Dr. Azli, education tell us how to best approach that. The second thing is, we want to have Malays good in science and technology. How best to do that? There's no point telling us the Japanese learn science and technology in Japanese, therefore the Malays can do the same thing. The Japanese have a long history of science and technology. We don't. Okay. So what is the effective way, the fastest way for you to learn science and technology? Is for you to learn the language. When enough of you become scientists, then you can write the books in Malay. So the best way right now, the most practical way, the fastest, the most efficient way, is to teach Malay in 2 languages and teach science in English, because that's the fastest way to acquire science. It's not the fastest way to learn English, because to learn English you have to learn English literature. But the fastest and practical way for you to acquire science quickly, without having to wait for translation, is to learn science in English right from the very beginning. So that's my answer.
Just now you said that you are against the one school system, right? So what is your opinion about how to instill the unity among the people? Because if we have many school systems, we are dividing the people, like between the races or any type of people. Yeah, so what do you think about it?
Now, I said we have different school systems, but each school, for them to get a license, they must attract a broad spectrum of Malaysians. If that school attracts only Malays, you don't get any funding. If they attract only Chinese, they don't get any funding. If they attract only Indians, they don't get any funding. If they attract only Malays, they don't get any funding. So it has to be a broad spectrum. And that's why you learn together. I don't care how you learn. You can learn Mandarin. What I like to do in Malaysia is don't call it Chinese school. Call it Sekolah Kebangsaan Bahasa Mandarin. And get the Chinese Muslims in China to teach. So that it removes the barrier of Chinese Mandarin from Chinese. You know, my grandson is in 2 grandsons in China learning perfect Mandarin. Because the maids speak to them in Mandarin. I don't see why Malays can't do that. You know, why have Indonesian maids? They speak the same language as you. What benefit did the son kids? Why not get Chinese Muslims who can speak Mandarin? There's thousands of them who love to come to Malaysia. Then not only they're brought by a fellow Muslim, they can learn Mandarin. See, part of the dynamics in Malaysia is this. The Chinese think by learning Malay, they look upon it as a soft to Malays. So they don't want to learn Malay. When they should have realized, the smart Chinese realize that when you learn Malay, you are learning another language, another skill. That's what Malaysia have the attitude. When you learn English, you're not trying to be a colonialist, you're not trying to be a Ahmad Saleh or Ahmad Saleh. You are learning another skill. And any skills you have is good. You never know what's going to come in handy. So that's my answer. You're right. If you give free choice, then people will segregate themselves. But when they learn together, I don't care what they learn. As long as they're in the same classroom, that's the best way to approach it. So that's how you solve the problem of the mixing together.